This is the 7th in a series of evidences for God. The first one is on March 16th. If you want to go back and locate the first 6 arguments strewn among my videos for the past 2 months. This is an argument from experience. And evidence that God exists is the various experiences I have had. Now, an atheist will be very quick to tell you that experiences don't count. They are subjective and anecdotal. They will say no experience can be used as evidence of anything. Well, if that's the case, we need to completely ignore the #MeToo testimonials of women who have experienced sexual predation. If that is the case, we need to completely ignore any African American who tells us about his or her experiences with racism. If that is the case, we need to completely ignore any Asian American who reports a hate crime. For that matter, we need to ignore the news. When there's an explosion, the reporter talks to someone who was there to tell us of their experience. Are we to write this off as illegitimate because it's subjective and anecdotal? And what about eyewitness testimony in courts? If experience were totally irrelevant, any such testimony would be worthless in pressing or defending the case. We just witnessed the trial of Derek Chauvin regarding George Floyd. Should we ignore what the bystanding eyewitnesses said as subjective and anecdotal? Obviously not. Quite obviously, if you literally walk into a table that is physically there and raise a bruise on your thigh, there is good evidence for the table and your experience with it. Oddly enough, much of what we learn is by experience. But if an atheist rules out the validity of experience, we are left with no reliable basis by which to claim anything is true. Interestingly, an atheist will argue that we can't believe the Gospels because the writers were not eyewitnesses. They didn't experience what they were writing about. But then they also argue that even if the writers were eyewitnesses and were there, their experiences don't count because they are subjective and anecdotal. William Lane Craig, the car threw me off, that you can know God exists wholly apart from arguments. Our experiences, just like our experiences of the external world, can certainly be valid. Unless you have evidence that I'm a lunatic, our experiences have weight. But the best explanation of the validity of experiences that I've read come from Richard Swinburn in a book called The Existence of God. Swinburn starts by saying that experiences can be effects of reality. Like, I think I hear a car outside the window, and there is one. Or the effects of sensation. I think I hear a car outside the window, but there isn't one. Into which category do religious experiences fall? Swinburn says it could be either. 1, God or an angel may actually appear to me, or 2, I may have a sensation of the room going around or of a timeless reality outside myself. Sometimes the car appears to be moving when it is not, but sometimes it actually is moving. He affirms that experiences can be public or private, and that one is no less or more legitimate than the other. Reading Swinburn's entire argument would be of value for you, but he continues by saying, in the absence of special considerations, experiences can be taken as genuine, and there is no rational reason to isolate religious experiences as being in a different category. There are substantial grounds to believe in the existence of God. It is intuitively right to take the way things seem to be as the way they are. He continues, if my experience tells me there is a table in the room or a statue in the garden, then there probably is. But if it seems to me there is no table in the room, then that is only reason for supposing there is not. If there are good grounds for supposing that I've looked everywhere in the room and having eyes in working order and being able to recognize a table when I see it, would have seen one if there were one there. An atheist's claim to have had an experience of its seeming that there is no God would only be evidence that there was no God if similar restrictions were satisfied. Perhaps they haven't looked everywhere or were not able to recognize God when they see Him. Most of our beliefs about the world are based on what others claim to have perceived. We do not normally check all that we are told, nor do we often have the means to do such. We tend to believe, apart from special conditions, that we have good reason to believe what others tell us about their experiences. When someone claims to have had an experience of God, the only way to defeat such a claim is to show that it is significantly more probable than not that there is no God, a case that is very difficult to win. In other words, efforts to restrict religious experience from validity are either unjustified or unsuccessful. Therefore, our experiences of God are valid evidence of the existence of God. Let's talk about it.